But I graduated from the university, and everyone in my family are teachers. So it was determined that I would become a teacher, and you had to have a master's degree.
Yes.
So I went to City College, got a master's degree, failed the history examination, and thought someone up there really loves me, and got a scholarship to the Neighbourhood Playhouse. I spent 2 years at the Playhouse studying with Meisner, and graduated and said, Broadway, here I come. And Uncle Sam said, just a moment. And there was a 5-year hiatus while I served in the Army for 5 years. When I came out, then I went to Broadway.
I wish truly that I had had 2 years of Sanford Meisner instead of 1 year, because he is a very great teacher, and through the years I've seen the students who have had the 2 years training, and when I met Eli Wallach, he had had the 2 years training, and they were ahead of me in technique.
All good actors have their own method. Who knows where it comes from.
So you can begin with this kind of technique, but ultimately you adapt it to your own method.
A good method is a technique which allows the motor to kick over. It's the kind that goes out into a car in the morning and says, it's cold. Now, how do we get the motor churning? That's a good method. That's a good technique. However, if you haven't got a good car and you haven't got a sense of driving, you can kick that motor over and make it turn, but it won't chug along very well, you see.
A little bit of the real Eli Wallach works its way into many of the roles that you play. You do rely upon...
Of course, if it didn't, you'd be insane. I mean,
Really?
I can pretend that I'm a French general, but I know full well when the makeup comes off, I'm me. And as a matter of fact, when the makeup is on, I'm me. Yeah. I'm distilling the outward form of the character through my experience, through my knowledge. An actor has, while he's playing, his concentration must be very strong. When he's working, when he's creating, during the rehearsal process, all the time he's awake. I love acting, and I love actors.
What is there about actors that
well,
makes you
Anne
love
says
them?
we're braver than astronauts in a sense of exposing ourselves on a stage, revealing certain emotions that crop up in other people that are universal, that they can identify with. Sometimes just walking into it with nonsense and let's just do it leaves you open enough and vulnerable enough so that you do begin to kick over the motor. That takes great courage, you know. Great courage to say, I'm not going to perform or push. I'm just going to listen, and things will happen to you. If you try to cry, the tears will elude you. If you leave yourself alone, you don't say, or a drunk, for example, a drunk doesn't say, I'm drunk, and I'm going to play a drunk. I mean, a drunk tries to be rather sober, but his speech has a little difficulty. That's it, and that's drunk enough. You know. But you see, the trick with the actor, why they thought he was a magician, why they thought he was an evil, with witchy powers, was because he could observe something that a person would say, yes, I felt that, I've thought that, I've never expressed it. But he's saying it for me, and I see it now. That kind of internal medicine is what's wonderful for the actor. He's an internist, or should be.
Things happen, sometimes unplanned. I think the height of a creative thing is when you don't try to pick it up, you don't try to pre-plan it, you don't try to build it with blueprints. It has to happen. You have to be free and open. But you see, you have to put aside a critical, there's that temptation to be critical and editorial in your own mind as you're playing.
Enjoy what you're doing, to listen. The big secret in acting is listening. A thought on the screen is amazing. And if you really listen, it comes to life.
This really is a thing that an actor or an actress has to learn, because the temptation, as you say, is really to just play your part and not listen intently. You're so nervous about how you're going to do.
Yeah.
Well, good movie actors, screen actors, listen very carefully.
What about the difference between performing in the theater, on stage, and in film or on television in terms of the audience? Because in film you certainly don't have an audience, and in television most of the time you don't have an audience.
That's right.
And is that a problem? Does that make a
I
big
think
difference?
it's the lure and the magnet that pulls the actor, the true actor, back to the theater all the time, because there's the only real contact that he has. An actor in films, you'll open a door and say, I will not. That's all. It'll take you half a day to shoot that. And I don't know how gratifying it is. It isn't to me. Although people get a lot more acclaim for movie work than they do for stage work. But the most satisfying for me is doing it on stage.
I enjoy the theater much more because it's a complete experience and you do it all at once. In 2 hours, you live through the experience. In the movies, that film took 3 months, 12 weeks.
You see, a good play not only entertains and amuses you, a good one educates you. I mean, George Bernard Shaw said, when I give them the lesson, they open their mouth in laughter and I put the pill in.
It gives us some insight into ourselves.
Yes, it does. I mean, there's nothing better or more cleansing than a good cry in a theater. People love to do that.
A movie script, an original script written for the movies, what they usually say is, after the first reading, let's get the rewrite. Let's bring someone else in. And there are usually 3 or 4 chefs making the one meal. In the theater, believe it or not, the playwright is king or queen, because you cannot change one word on the stage of a play. You can't say, I just felt differently. I didn't want to say it. You can't do that. In movies, you stick to the script, but it's been written by 4 or 5 other people. So the insights, the invention of the playwright, the original playwright, is often distorted, weakened, watered, and it doesn't come out well. Well, in the beginning, you know, when I started in the theater, there were no microphones. You had to give out. Whereas in the movies, stage actors tend to overdo. And don't remember what I said about listening. One of the secrets in good film acting is listening and not having to push.
People say, how long did you want to be an actor? And as a kid, my bed was the Sahara Desert. And I was always in the Foreign Legion, crawling across the desert and getting shot. My mother would come in and say, it's time to eat, and I'd say, I'm bleeding. And now I get paid to do the same thing. Nobody in my family had anything to do with the theater. They all thought I was a little nuts, but they would be tolerant and understanding. I think one of the drives of any young person going into the theater is to convince the doubters, to convince your parents, to convince your friends that you can make it.
When I said I wanted to be an actor, that was kind of a jolt. They couldn't understand what adrenaline was flowing through me. But I was convinced I could be an actor. Of course, a lot of people...
How were you convinced you could be an actor?
Well, I thought I had some secret key, some way of saying things that people would identify with, or touching people, or moving people. Now, some people do it via teaching. There's nothing more beautiful than to form a mind than to influence a mind. Some people do it through medicine, and some people do it through law.
What I would say to a young actor, trust yourself. When you were a little boy and you played, the radiator was hot and you were warming your hands, it's always the adult who says, that's not a real stove. You say, I know, I'm making believe. That's what I'm doing. Well, as you grow older, you begin to discard all those wonderful insights that you had as a little boy. Inside of each of us is encapsulated and boxed in is a child who says, the more the exterior grows older, the inside says, no, I refuse, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to stay young. And I think acting tends to have that effect on people. All the art forms, the older people seem to relish being older, but they're still at heart young. I mean, you got Rubinstein, Picasso, Stokowski, all the old Einstein, all these old people inside were still young. Picasso said a wonderful thing. He stood in his studio and they interviewed him and said, do you paint every day? He was 90. He said, yes, every day. And they said, well, what do you do? He said, I go in the room and I stand in front of the canvas and I paint. They said, on your feet all day? He said, yes. They said, don't you get tired? No, he said, I leave my body outside. And that's what actors try.
The first formative years of your life make an indelible impression on you. I became aware of temper and emotion and feeling, and I wanted to channel it somehow. I didn't know.
It saves psychiatry bills. Neither one of us have been analyzed. We find plays that have tremendous fights in them. Next season we're going to do a play called Sparky and the Fits, about an old couple who fight all the time. And we love it because everything that we deposited in angst and anger will come out in the work, and that's it. And we get our release when the audience loves it.
Well, that's interesting.
Our feeling was that we're very protective of our profession, and that we feel that acting and theater and film is a necessity rather than a luxury, and that it's a dignified profession. And yes, we want our children in it, although there is so much pain involved with it.
Listen, I think the two important things in life are to find the right partner to share your life with, and two, to find out what you really want to do. I know a lot of people who ulcers and business and fortunes and money and material things, and inside they're sick, they're dying, they're in anguish because they think, I'm not going to get a second shot at what I really want to do. I like people who are lawyers for 30 years and suddenly say, I think I'll be an actor.